Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Untidy. I'm Hannah Davison, co-founder and author of My Big Moments children's books, the books that help your little people through big moments, also a mother of two, and I'm here with my radiant co-host.
Oh, thank you so much. I am Matilda Green, content creator and mum of three little ones. And today on the pod, we're lucky enough to have the legend that is Stacey Morrison. So you may remember Stacey as Stacey Daniels from What Now or My Time or Marae, or you might know her from the radio, but I'm guessing 99.99% of New Zealand will know her. Stacey is a passionate advocate for te reo Māori and has written books to help people on their reo journey, such as Māori at Home, Māori Made Fun, Kia Kaha, My First Words in Māori, which is a favourite in our house, and My First Words in Tikanga Māori. We're so excited to have you with us today. Welcome, Stacey.
Kia ora kōrero tahi. So lovely to be with you both. And thank you for giving me a really good insight into who you are, or who we think we are on any given day, right?
It changes. It always changes. Yeah. It's like, am I my job? Am I the parent? Am I anything else? Can't think of anything else.
Well, I think the name of the podcast is the best. Go, if it's untidy, it's right. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's untidy, it's honest, you know?
And it's on brand. It's very handy having an untidy brand, actually.
It really is. It really is. Well, and I suppose, sometimes we just need labels often for other people because, it just helps other people figure out where we are and what we do, even though it's not really what we identify as. And I suppose a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is about our identity. So I guess that leads us in pretty well. But I think to kick us off, Stacey, could you tell us a little bit about your early life and your whānau and where you grew up?
Well, first of all, I guess in any setting, usually we talk about where we come from in a tribal sense. No Ngāi Tahu ahau, I'm from Ngāi Tahu, no Te Arawa hoki, and I'm from Te Arawa, he Pākehā hoki ahau, and I'm also Pākehā from my mum's side. And I grew up in Christchurch, in Aotearoa, and I moved around a little bit as a kid, but mostly I kind of still consider myself, if you look at where my iwi come from, those are the two places I connect to, Christchurch and Rotorua and Bay of Plenty, but also live in Tamaki Makaurau. And I am one of, it's always hard to describe how many people there are in our family because my dad has been married 3 times. So I have a brother and 2 stepsisters from his marriages. And my sister and I from my mum and dad's marriage, and then another sister from mum's second marriage. So I just don't even do the math on how many of us there are. But
there's heaps, basically.
Yeah, there's heaps of us. We're a blended whānau, and very much, I guess, in that way, a New Zealand whānau. Some of us are Māori, some of us aren't, and quite often the lines aren't very obvious.
Oh, I love that. And what was your relationship like within your whānau with the te reo Māori language and culture growing up?
And not strong, not always comfortable. So growing up, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so in Christchurch, Christchurch and the South Island, I guess, a different time and perception of myself. So I knew I was Māori, and my grandparents especially, really engaged in the marae and being Māori. And so at that time, there was a lot of things that were happening in terms of Ngāi Tahu and, a settlement that was many years. And my paua, my grandfather, he was involved in Ngāi Tahu kind of claims and higher governance. And then my dad was as well. But it wasn't something that was sitting comfortably, I guess, for my dad as my Māori parent. Yet my parents actually met at what they called then a Māori cultural group, which my grandparents from England joined as well, which I really love that they came over here and they've just been, they love the songs, they love the waiata. And so my granddad used to play a banjo and say like pantomimes in England, and then he just brought it here, and they all came together in central New Brighton and Christchurch, and that's where they met my grandparents on the other side and the teenage lovers, pretty Romeo and Juliet without the dark ending. I'm the dark ending. I'm the mid for my parents. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool that in that way, Māori culture and a love of, the most, I guess one of the most accessible parts of our culture, being waiata, is really, genuinely, literally what brought me into being from both sides of my whānau. But I didn't have that. I'm not someone who was brought up speaking Māori or found it easy always to access that part of myself and feel comfortable in the culture. But it's been a journey back that I'm really grateful for, and my whānau is the biggest probably motivator in that.
Can you explain what it feels like to not have grown up having that intimate connection with your native language? You know, when that was your birthright, really, to speak Māori. And I understand that for those people who don't get to speak their native language, that's held as a trauma in the body. And that's, I think, something many of us won't have any understanding of. So if you could give us an understanding of that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for describing it like that. And I think it's actually taken years for us to be able to do that so that you could access, in that description, what you just said, how it feels to be outside of your culture, how that can reside as trauma in your body. Because if you think about, if there might be a place or something that you connect to, you go, I just feel really at home here. And you feel connected to it. So you feel like that, and yet it's not easily accessible. And then if you think about when you see haka or waiata, and if you've ever got goosebumps, sort of on the back of your neck when you hear it. So that feeling to me tells us that te reo Māori is part of us. But then when like your face tells the world that you're Māori and that's part of you, but you can't express that, I think for me, it didn't feel right. It felt incomplete. It felt like, an untidy part of myself that I had to try to figure out. And that's hard when you're busy just trying to grow up. So timing is everything, in terms of, in your high school years, you're not always ready to dive into that. So I just did what I think is quite a natural thing in high school, just avoid the Māori teacher so that I couldn't be embarrassed. And then, and the way that we talk about it as trauma and why that might sound like a lot to some people is because if you understand the story of te reo Māori and how it was actively removed by, say, legislation like the Native Schools Act. So my grandmother, born in 1930, went to a native school. And so if you think about, Māori kids going to a native school, but only being taught English, and they would have Māori as their first language and be beaten. There was corporal punishment for them speaking Māori because they wanted them to, I guess there's different ways of talking about, assimilate basically into speaking English. And so what that does is tells people of the time that Māori is of no use. That still continued throughout my childhood, considering that Māori's only been an official language since 1987. So I see, I guess it's adult Māori men and women who find themselves in situations like tangihanga, like funerals, and they have this innate understanding that if they could speak Māori, there's things in their heart they'd be able to express better. And then they feel a sense of, I should be able to do that. And yet societal pressure that's ensured that they can't do that. And so crashing in on your grief is all those feelings of inadequacy, of trauma that's not always yours. So if you think about how a grandparent will pass that on at a sometimes not even a spoken level, that the association is, if I speak Māori, I get hit, I get hurt. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to teach my children. And as I say, that's why it feels like such a big block and a traumatic sort of scar to overcome. And that's not a great place to come to learning. So when you're trying to learn any language, ideally you've got open ears, open mind, open heart, and it's a lot easier. Whereas if your heart and mind and your weight or your spirit are going, I feel this frustration that I can't already do this. So I feel the resentment that I'm learning this, but then I feel like, is it important? There's a lot of things that will mess with your head while you're trying to be open to learning.
Well, I mean, that makes total sense because you think of learning a language as like, oh, what an interesting, fun hobby. You know what I mean? Like I might travel somewhere and learn learn the language. But when it's relearning your birthright that is so emotionally charged, I would imagine that's a very different journey. And so when did that really kick off for you, like diving into your reo and learning it?
I guess through almost exactly that experience you described, by learning Japanese as an exchange student. So I'm there in the culture and I go, oh, okay, right. If you just give it a go, you can actually, actually speak a bit of Japanese and you get going. Oh, okay, I see where that goes. Right. Totally different feeling. And you get all the points for being able to say just a little bit, or to be a gaijin, to be a foreigner who can speak a bit of Japanese. So I know that experience of going, wow, how awesome, how energizing. I'm getting better. And then compare that to what it made me think as a 17, 18-year-old at the time as well. I can speak someone else's language and I can't speak my own. And so I thought I need to rectify that. And it only took me about 15 years after that to kind of get to that place. So that's partially what motivated it, that I knew what it felt like to learn language in an immersion setting and knew that it could feel really good. I couldn't have known that it would be, like you say, so layered and more fractured than I had realized, because it is something that ideally I would have had as a birthright. And I like the fact, Hannah, that you even called it that a birthright, because that's what my husband and I have returned to our children in particular as their birthright. So now it's their choice. They are fluent in both languages, but they will not have to spend years learning what we consider their birthright and what we consider a part of them being able to engage in their full selves.
So do you guys speak fluent te reo with your kids at home?
Yeah, that's the first language of our home. Yeah, and it always has been, right from when they were in the womb even. We'd do karakia for them every night. And I think it's that sort of comfort and solace that I got when we would do karakia for our babies while they're in the womb, that I longed for. Like, it's weird how you can not know exactly what it is you're longing for, but you still long for it. And so in searching for te reo Māori, I guess in those moments when I could hear karakia going over my child and that it was making me feel calm and making me feel like I was doing a better job of protecting my child that I was carrying, I was like, this is what I knew my language had waiting for me. But I couldn't have predicted it. Yeah.
It's so beautiful, Stacey, because I think, when you talk about having to overcome trauma to learn your language, to learn something new, your nervous system has to feel safe for your brain to work, to be able to even take in the information. And so you would have to overcome all of that on your journey to learning te reo. But when you're giving karakia to your unborn child, you're putting your nervous system in a safe place and you're putting their nervous system in a safe place and then layering that with the language. And so you've made it safe, on a cellular level, which is an incredible gift to give to the next generation.
Yeah, and I like the way you've framed that, because it's true. I see adults go, I'm not getting it, and they go into panic mode. And it is our nervous system, which we probably don't talk about enough, but it's shutting everything down. It's like, the Inside Out movies are so good because they just remind us that, that's what's going to happen inside. Your brain's sending out messages like, we don't know what we're doing. Everyone freak out. Everyone just tell all the systems we're stuffed. We can't do it.
Shut down learning mode. Turn off learning.
Turn off ears, turn off mouth, turn off everything. And I've seen that happen. That's the manifestation of that trauma and sadness and frustration, that it's not just coming. And yes, in response to that, so I think about the karakia that we have shared with a lot of people for going to sleep. And I shared it again during the COVID lockdowns because, kids were feeling anxious, adults were feeling anxious. And so just reminding people it's a simple karakia that tells us that the sky is calm, the earth is calm, and everything is well, and we can be safe and know that we can go to sleep surrounded by the love and contentment that is in our whānau, and we can sleep well. So that sounds like this. Ai ona te rangi, ai ona te whenua, ai ona te ao katoa. Ai ona te moia te whānau, I roto I te mai, te matihere me te Māori ori e, kia au te moe. And so when we still do that with our kids, the youngest being 11, they'll be going, na, 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 but I see their breathing change. I see them and give an involuntary yawn, and everyone just sort of goes, and it's that response that yes is in the language and is in the mindfulness of karakia. But the more that we do that, and that's something that we can learn, it's really accessible to learn, then it's more of our connection to karakia giving us, emotional aid. Yeah.
I even felt it just then. It's like, oh, that is nice.
And it has been quite a stressful week. I needed that.
Yeah, even though you go, well, this is an intention. It's not actually calm right now, but hopefully I'll get there by the end of this karakia.
Yeah. And so speaking about the trauma that we mentioned, how did you navigate that healing journey that you needed to do from being separated from your language? Like, is there anything else that you implemented during that time?
Yeah, well, I guess one thing is that naming it as trauma has actually only been language trauma, especially has only been something that I've been aware of for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years. So that was actually having a word for it is always good. Sort of like perimenopause. You're like, oh, it's a thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So that has helped because it just presents as like different forms of anxiety. And so I guess what it did do, when something pushes you to the limits, you question why you're doing it, and you either give up or you don't. And for me, it brought out a stubbornness, determination, and I guess my end game became important enough that I was going to get through no matter what. And that sort of, for one thing, it was like, I guess when you know that you're getting closer, you can kind of think, I've got to keep going. If I give up now, then I've managed to just lose everything. Because it's like fitness, it's like a muscle, a language muscle. And if you think, I'm pretty strong now, I don't need to do weights for 3 years. It doesn't work. Like you'll just lose.
Which we've all discovered at some point in our lives. Yeah.
Oh, wait. So it's not just something I have
now. It's finished.
Yeah. It's not permanent unless you keep on looking after it. So I guess for me, it was that realization. I would stop and I'd start again and I'd, try a different way. But ultimately, in the end, it was, I guess, me and my husband going, right, our hope and our deep desire and vision for our whānau is that our kids will have Māori language as their first language. And so in order to do that, staying and speaking Māori the entire time, and I didn't even know about the motherhood part and how hard it would be to find any words when you're absolutely sleep deprived. But that was the driving force. And to tell you the truth, I kind of forgot that that opting out was an option. I just kept on, getting through in a very untidy way. Like I remember one of my friends who's also done this, they said, sometimes you just actually haven't got the words. And so she'd go, one time her child sort of wedged themselves between the couch and the wall, and she said, what do I even say? She said, Kate, they're stuck, queer. You are, what is this? How do I express
this
it?
This is not in the manual. How do I?
That's actually why we wrote, say, Māori at Home as a manual, And I
Yeah.
sort of say to people, this is an up and go survival guide because we're just out here surviving. And you don't even have to know why you're saying that. But here is this phrase that I'll give you that's slightly better than Kate te stakwe, and it will get you through.
That's so brilliant. And so, having got to this point where you're fluent and you're teaching it and sharing it with the wider community, and having overcome those feelings of discomfort with your relationship with Te Reo Māori, what feelings are associated with you now when you speak and you share it and you have dialogue with your children and community?
Oh, I mean, I think like anything, if you get to a better place, you've got to recognize it as a better place because otherwise you're kind of ruining your own enjoyment of it. So there's lots of times, like I said to my daughter last night, as she heads off to the Kapahaka Nationals, she's like so my 2.0. I could never have done that. I also could not do that now. I just said, this is the dream come true. And that's not to say that that's what they all have to do, but the fact that she wants to, that she spends 10 hours a day in practice, that she's made this team that's one of the best in the country. I just said, you are like, this is our ancestors' wildest dreams coming true, and they're living through you. And it sounds kind of twee in English, but it sounds better in Māori. And so that's, I guess those are the kind of things, and then recognizing as well that my kids don't feel about the language in the same way that we do, and that's a good thing for them to kind of look at me and go, okay, mama, is a good thing. It's their privilege, but how I could never be mad at them for not feeling the same way about the language as we do, and because they shouldn't. Their relationship is completely different. So but all we wanted is for them to be able to make the choice rather than be stuck with one choice, which is either that you can't speak your language and that's how you're going to live your life, or you are going to spend, you're going to have to figure out how that's going to work for you. But don't worry, I still have moments when I listen to myself speaking Māori and I don't have to think anymore and I don't have to translate, because that's a very tiring phase when you go, okay, I'm thinking in English and now I'm translating in my brain and now I'm sending it down to my mouth and now I'm trying to send it out, and it has taken approximately a minute for all of that to happen, and that's not a very free-flowing conversation.
Your kids are like, yeah, we're trying to, is this going to come out?
Because I see people doing it, like when they, especially when they go to speak to my husband, and I see that they look at him and then all of that dialogue's going on in their heads and they're like, I just want to bail out of this and die and just I'll speak English, or I have no idea what I'm doing. But both of us just stay there and we look at them and sort of smile and then try to encourage them, maybe try to feed one line, one word, not too many, because we know what it's like to be sitting on the other side, speaking to a fluent speaker going, I just got completely psyched out.
I filmed something with you, Stacey, quite a few years ago. And I remember afterwards, I was still transitioning at the time from Lake Rotoiti to Lake Rotoiti. And I still find Rotoiti really difficult to say. And it's taken a lot of practice. And we were going there that weekend. You said, oh, what are you guys up to this weekend? And I said, we're going to, and then I was like, right, this is a time where I've really got to commit to Rotoiti. So I was like, we're going to Lake Rotoiti, and you were so lovely, and you just said, "Don't be nervous," You
Yeah.
just, it's okay. And I was like, "Yeah, it's okay." And I was just like, "Right, come on, It's just a word. I can do this." But it is like when you're so used to something being easy, and then it like all of a sudden gets a bit more difficult with that kind of pronunciation. Like there's this pressure when you speak to someone that you really want to get it right. Because it's like, right, this is a moment where I want to nail this. And I'm sure that's probably how people that are a lot more fluent in today or are speaking to like you or your husband, because they're like, I really want to nail this. I really want to get this right.
I've got something so funny to tell you about that particular word. So yes, roto itzi. Roto being lake, itzi being small, so the small lake, roto itzi. But I agree. There's something about the roto and then the change to itzi that makes it a little bit harder, roto itzi. But the weird thing is that my husband is pretty good at Māori. He grew up in Rotorua, and because that's what everyone says, I still catch him talking about the rugby club. Oh, yeah, he plays Rotorua. I said, "That's a what?" And he goes, "It's just, like that's what everyone calls it." Seriously, you. And he is staunch. But sometimes you get a Rotorua and a Rotoiti out of him. And it's who he's talking to, the times they're talking about, and he laughs as well. Because we've got to laugh sometimes, or else we're just going to be scrapping with each other. But there are some that, like, say, rotoitzi, I can see how that's hard. Some just like Tamaki Makoto is just on fire. People will say Tamaki Makoto so easily and so well. And then there's ones like remueda, which I find harder to say because it's not actually the word that it should be. It should be remueda. So it was written incorrectly. So you know how it's remu, R-E-M-U, and then E-R-A, there's actually a W missing before that E-R-A. So if you say it with a W sound like remueda, so remueda with the w kind of sound in there, it's correct, and it's actually easier to say. Remueda.
That's much easier to say.
Yeah. So
because there are a few that are just a bit more difficult, and I find that I've got to do a bit of a pause beforehand, and I'm like, okay, so
how much is happening in that pause? that like those, that not even a second feels like an age.
It does when you have to consciously think about the next word that you're going to say, until it becomes kind of like cellular memory and you can just roll it off. You really have to consciously think about it. And I feel quite envious of our tamariki today because it's so much more part of the school curriculum that my kids have like incredible pronunciation. And I just think, back to when I grew up and I was at primary school in the early 90s and it was all sort of backslaps and high fives, so just being able to sing the Māori national anthem, and that was about as far as it went. And so now there's all this kind of like, okay, we need to get back into this phase of learning again.
Are they mean to you? Do your kids correct your pronunciation quite ruthlessly?
No, they're pretty good. I make a point of commending them on their pronunciation and hope that they won't be mean to me back.
I've heard kids, not Māori kids, but like little kids at primary school, and they go, "Oh my gosh, Dad, it's tauranga. It's not tauranga. It's tauranga."
Yeah. It's great.
Not taupo.
Yeah. It's great to hear. And, that generation, I think we've got a bit of a sticky generation. Our generation, the one above, it's a little bit sticky as change is taking place. But I think the next generation, it's going to be just so much smoother, so many fewer questions asked, less friction. And
this is what it is. Like I think about it in a different context, but I remember checking in with my daughter while she was doing a TikTok dance, and this this song had the N word in it. And I was like, oh, I just better double check that. I was going, so how māramatanga e pāna ki te N word? Like, what do you know about the N word? And she didn't stop dancing. She just went, you can't say it if you're not black. Like, what?
It ain't no thing. I love
you can't say it. Mena hara koe te mangamangu. If you're not black, then you can't say it. Like, and it's like, well,
obviously.
So it's like you don't say it, like that's what it is. It's tauranga, so that's what it is. That's kind of how they look at it. And I agree with you. I feel like they're just so free because they just go, well, that's what it is. It's correct and it's the right thing to do. So why do you need to get yourself twisted about it like we tend to?
And I guess like that's the kind of sticking point, I think, for possibly older generations, especially that have gone so long saying it a certain way that they've like got this fear of looking silly or getting it wrong, or like sometimes they're embarrassed to even be seen to be trying, and that's just something that we need to get over. Like, part of me thinks there is possibly like the older generation, that ship has kind of sailed. I'm just going to be honest, I think. And
Yeah,
but it's like there's this whole new breed of generations that are like really trying, and it's just it's cool. And I really like seeing when people around us like try as well and get it wrong, and then people can just correct without being like, dumbass, it's actually
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like, you can,
But also
just bring a bit of kindness.
you can just reply like we have conversations about or in whangamata, and we'll be saying whangamata, and other people, people even within our family might be saying wanga back in the same sentence, and we just go, yeah, we're just going to keep on saying whangamata because this is whangamata. And I think I agree with you. I can see that some people, that's not going to change for them. But what we can figure out a little bit more is to kind of refute some things that were often thrown at us, like, oh, well, no one else speaks this language, so there's no point. It's, to me, it's like no one else speaks this language, and that is the point. That it's only up to us to look after it and to make it part of our lives. And I guess it's not even quite true either, because I've found that, say, I was interviewing the Tahitian ambassador. He came to New Zealand and they brought a French translator, and they said, so you ask in English and then he will translate it to French, speak to the ambassador and translate it back. I just ended up speaking Māori to him, and Māori is close enough to Tahitian because we are connected ancestrally, and we could speak to each other. There's enough room in between that we knew what each other was saying. And so the translator ended up going, oh, you don't need me, and didn't come into the shop. I just spoke Māori to them, and they spoke Tahitian. In Hawaii, it's close. We've had like a 45-minute conversation with Hawaiians, and they're speaking Hawaiian and we're speaking Māori, and we just, sometimes we might go, how does he come then? Like, what does that mean? And they go, oh, kupuna, tupuna, kupuna, tupuna. Ah, okay. So sometimes it's just one letter.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I notice now that I can kind of understand a bit more. When I hear Tongan, I know I'm like, okay, I can pick up little bits, a little bit of Samoan, but then also randomly, Latin makes more sense to me now, because I can look at the root word and I go, because I understand a bit more about language coding, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I do this really annoying thing to my friend who's a doctor, and I go, so basically this is referring to malignant, and so that means, and she's like,
and just is inflammation, and
yes.
So, yeah, but it is like, you're right. It's like when you know these few kind of fundamentals, then you can kind of fumble through it. Yeah.
It's so important, I think, to understand what the resistance is and what the obstacles are, but also understand the why. Like, what is the point? What is this actually giving to us as a nation? And talking about how it can connect us as a nation, and how do you express that when you're dealing with someone who's like, what is the point? How does this bring us together?
Someone who's a Karen on Facebook. Yeah.
A message for the Karens.
Yes, yeah. Well, mostly I just let them live their lives, because I actually can't get distracted. I need to work with the people who are interested. And there are so many people who are open and hungry to learn that I actually owe them more time. So that's where I try to invest my time. But I can see where the discomfort is, and they go, well, look, I grew up understanding that the language that Māori it's not important. So why is this change? People don't like things changing. And if they perceive that changes the value of English, that's just a narrative. It's not true, because, so when I went for my translator license, where a lot of people who are already fluent speakers of Māori have to work very hard, is to make sure that the English is extremely accurate and high level to match the Māori. So it actually can, being bilingual is a great thing. But if you never experience it, then you kind of want to devalue it, because then you feel like you might be missing out on something. So I guess then I look at who we are and say the haka that the All Blacks do, being kamate and also kapa o pango, and how the rest of the world experiences that. So it's like if you have a friend and they're really good at one thing, so you always go at the party, go sing your song, she's great. And then you go, now can you just not sing and do, like, don't do your practice around here, don't, like, don't make it awkward for me that I can't sing, like that's really what we're doing. If we go, okay, we're proud of this aspect of our a culture of our country and of our Aotearoa, of us being New Zealand Aotearoa, but then we can't be bothered with some aspects of it. You can see in any relationship that would cause sadness, and not feel like mutual respect. So I guess it's like, when are we our best? And actually, I really believe that us honouring who we are, how we came together, how that can embrace all of us, and Te Reo Māori is actually a taonga, a treasure for all of us, then I think that's really special. Like I saw Amy Poehler, who plays Joy in Inside Out, just to go back to that great movie, her saying that one of the things that brings her joy is watching haka on social media. And she goes, and I cry, and there's a dad at the wedding, and he's doing a haka, and then they do, and she goes, I just watch them, she goes, I don't know what they're saying, but I just feel it, and it's so intense. And like, that is a good thing in life, to experience as humans that high intensity of feeling, of spirituality, of I don't even know what word I should use to describe it, but heightened senses, I think, are part of a really rich, full opportunity we have in Aotearoa.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's such a vehicle for the subtle layers of experience. It carries so much with it. And I think if we can access that, that's going to bring us such richness as well. And I think, it resonates with me that using te reo as a nation and a language that's unique to us here in Aotearoa can bring us together with that sense of collective culture. But I think one of the roadblocks for me that I feel aware of in myself is needing to understand, like, what is my place in using te reo? Do I have a place? And I think that respect and reverence for something that doesn't seem like my birthright can be an obstacle. So how much right do I have to the language, and is there any point that anyone's feel is kind of overstepping into cultural appropriation?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I mean, I think firstly in your everyday life, I think, Matilda, when you said, you were saying to me roto iti, I think part of it was you wanted to say to me, this is who I am. I'm someone who respects the language and gives it a shot. So it's about your own personal identity, and go, what sort of New Zealander am I? And you wanted in that moment to go, this is me, and it is you. But it's just a bit nerve-wracking. So I think, are you someone, you don't have to think about overstepping in your everyday life. Every piece of effort and thought and aroha, which is love, but also compassion, that you've put into te reo Māori is appreciated, because that's how you show respect, is actually listening and trying, and also showing your kids, this is what we do in our family. This is what we do. We live in a suburb that's called Takapuna, and we call it Takapuna, because, and maybe we end up understanding what that means, for instance, that kind of thing, because it gives us a deeper understanding to the place where we belong and where we connect to. So te reo Māori, I can tell you, is definitely for you. As I say, when you hear te reo Māori, when you hear haka, when you hear waiata, if it hits you at a physical, emotional level, it's part of you. So then you decide and express it how you want to. The only worry you could get into in terms of appropriation, that usually becomes about fiscal profit. So unless you're like giving it to Google and saying, give me $1 million, you're unlikely to cross over that. Sometimes we have to be careful, like the Pākehā fluent speakers that I know have put themselves in so many learning situations that they are really unlikely to overstep. Generally, the whole process helps them sit in a place of going, I understand more about the story of why this language, why Te Reo Māori, is endangered and still in a precarious state. And so therefore, look at what they can do. I mean, one of my friends, Melanie, she's an incredible writer, and she's just done this beautiful piece of research, and also is writing really mindfully articles as Pākehā, who is a fluent speaker, and going, this is what I can tell you about, say, the status of Te Reo Māori when government departments are told that it should be New Zealand Transport Agency rather than waka kotahi. Because actually, it's unlawful, because as an official language you can definitely just use waka kotahi. And I remember saying to the Minister of Māori Development, but he goes, it's not law, it was just a direction. And he said, okay, well, you kind of send an email and change some signs, and that cost you quite a lot of money. But it's funny to me because a lot of people just go waka kotahi because that's what it is to them. And it is, oranga tamariki, or it is kāinga ora. But what I'd say is waiting in Te Reo Māori is an opportunity for all of us to feel stronger about our connection to this whenua, and that this is the language that resonates in the lakes, in the mountains, that is born of this place, actually. Because even if we are iwi who believe that we came here from Hawaii, because some iwi have stories that start them here, our language has been shaped by this land. And we only became Māori once we came here. Because, say if we think about Tahiti being a place where my iwi came from, so there we identify differently than when we got here and, landed at Maketu and then have generations here and then became what we now know as Māori. So it's definitely shaped in the environment and the very essence of this land. So it's for all of us.
I really feel that, and it brings up some emotion in me as well, which I'm still trying to kind of understand. But it's that I think being Pākehā, a lot of what I've felt lacking is a sense of really tying our identity to nature and the environment, and having a really interactive relationship and a really reverential relationship with that, and developing that real sense of meaning and belonging, not just by who we are and this is what I do for work and this is what my family looks like, and these are the hobbies that I do, but really understanding and developing an identity in relation to where we are and who we are with and what is around us and what's influencing us on every level. And I think that's where I see the opportunity and the invitation to all of us, and you can almost feel this kind of pull, and I think that's why it's important to talk about it and understand it and see where we can start to connect in ourselves with the opportunity that Te Reo brings us. I also, on that was a beautiful segue, actually, because I also want to talk to you about Matariki. And we're releasing this episode especially to coincide with Matariki Māori New Year. And its meaning is something that a few people might be unfamiliar with, and something that, that we can also miss out on as Pākehā, not having that understanding and of what that intrinsic connection is to nature and our environment and fostering that relationship. So could you educate us a little bit on Matariki and how we can use this time to find some meaning and connection with the invitation that brings?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Matariki is such a beautiful opportunity for all of us to reset, to consider the years just gone, to perhaps remember people that we've lost in that time, to consider the bounty and what we have to be grateful for right now, to look at our environment, to eat together, particularly eat together, actually. It's an extreme directive to eat together. So crops from the ground are represented by the star Tupuanuku, crops from The trees are above, represented by the star Tupuarangi. Also Waiti, which is the star that is linked to fresh water. So there we're talking, trout or anything that comes from there. Waita, which is connected to salt water. So that's anything from the sea. Koda, nice if you can get some, crayfish. So it connects us to the environment, to mindfully eating together in gratitude for what we have at this point. And then with Hiwai Te Rangi, especially the wishing star, we look forward to the intentions for the year ahead and go, okay, what is it that we want to do? And the reason that Matariki in particular, I think, is its resurgence as a national event is really important, because it's the only thing really seated and tied in our environment. Because, other public holidays, say Christmas has a definite reason for the season, and the pictures of Santa Claus don't work for our environment. So that narrative is slightly different for us, but this is a narrative that goes, it's cold, and ideally we are eating, we've done our harvest, we are ready to take that moment that as all humans is powerful for us to look up at something bigger than us, look up at the skies, and ask to, first of all, to seek comfort, in grief, especially. I think that's one of the most powerful processes that's embedded in our tikanga for Matariki. And then to look at the environment and consider, what is the environment telling us? It's a moment to listen to the environment, and then to make plans, and then to look forward. And so I'm part of the Matariki national broadcast again, and that sort of goes everywhere. You'll probably end up seeing it with me cut out, but it's kind of the bit where, the karakia that are offered, and now for the last 3 years have been offered with subtitles, for the very distinct reason that Dr. Rangi Mātāmua and the Matariki Advisory want everyone to be able to engage with it and to go, wow, that's beautiful. So, when you just listen to the karakia, you can go, well, I feel something, and now you can look at it and go, oh my gosh, this is about looking to, the skies, in particular with Pohutukawa, and seeing the spirit of someone that I have lost in the last year, and taking solace in the fact that if I understand this narrative that they have now travelled and traversed for a year, and that's what we've felt them around in this time of grief, and that in it becoming a year later, our grief doesn't stop, but we reach a milestone that we'd needed in our grief, and that we then can go, okay, how about if I consider that they're in the net of taramainuku, and they've been carried to a different, higher level, and they are now a star. And we can call out their name, and we can cry again, because it's a good thing to do. Don't give a timing to your grief, and let it all out, and then go, okay, they endure like a star in my sky forever. So to me, for us all to lean into, I guess, that ancient wisdom that, again, was something that I suspected was waiting, wrapped up in the language for me, but didn't know, I think is so comforting. And I'm just really glad that it's being made accessible for everybody. And then apart from that, it's also about celebration. So there'll be, so many events that you can go to with your whānau. Yes, we tend to do things before dawn, because our belief is that's the most powerful time, especially, for all the energies, and you can sort of feel it. I mean, for one thing, you're just giving you, you're going, wow, I'm really tired. But it's such an interesting stilled energy at that time of day. Yeah, so that the spirituality of that, and of moving quietly in the dark, and then being in contemplation in a form of incantation, is something that, in most places in Aotearoa now, you can go to a public event like that and have, take to it and from it what you need. But it's so important that all of us go, yeah, this is for all of us. And the best thing is, I love the messages I get this time. So what can I eat?
Food plan.
So I know kumara. What shall I do with kumara? I go, well, luckily you can do everything with kumara. but yeah, let's not underestimate. Say the kids at school probably will have Matariki events. So if you engage in that, we're just, to your point, Hannah, going, what am I doing this for? Who am I trying to be? And it's like, well, this is part of their upbringing, part of their childhood. And it'll be surprising to them that there was ever a time that we forgot about Matariki.
Yeah. Well, I've found it ever since it became a public holiday. It's felt really unifying, because up until a few years ago, I didn't even know about it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. And now, like, my son's only 4, and he's coming home from preschool, like, asking, he wants to go and see the Matariki stars, and he was like, because they're presenting rain and wind and salt water, and so he knows all of this stuff, and he's 4.
Yeah.
And he's like coming home and letting me know, and we're going to have some kai, and we're going to look for the stars, and it's going to be awesome. But I've found, like, even just learning about it and experiencing it when it comes around is it's a really beautiful way to, I know it sounds a bit much, but I think sometimes, as like Pākehā people who don't necessarily subscribe to a religion like Christianity or Catholicism or anything like that, that you can feel a little bit disconnected, and like we need something to bind to feel like we can connect, and it kind of gives us an opportunity that isn't a Christianity
It's a
thing,
spirituality, and I think it's
spirituality that we're like looking for, in a way, because like sometimes I feel like my culture is sort of like sausages and tea.
We laughed about this. We're like, what is our culture? Is it kind of like roast dinners and sort of slightly
And
functional alcoholism and sweeping things under the rug? Like, is that
and manners.
and manners?
Yeah.
yes as well. And I mean, it's half of me, so I can say that as well. But that sort of spirituality, that's not straight off the gram. I think, see, one of the things that I manifested in my husband was, that time in life I was about 31, and I knew one of the things that I wanted in a life partner was a man, yes, emotionally available and intelligent, but also spiritually open. I think I said open. And for me, that aspect of my husband engaging in his spirituality so deeply, and he's fortunate that he's been trained as a ruanuku, so he can actually do karakia, is yes, very attractive, but it's really, like you say, it's like, so who am I? And like, I know, Matilda, your husband, and Hannah, how you were talking about, I feel connected to this land. I feel like I do have a spirituality and a frequency that I pick up from being from New Zealand. So how do I express that? And I do think, yes, being in our oceans and appreciate it and going, this is my place. The light at Piha, the water at the sand, this is part of my, if you had to, I guess, present me in a physical landscape, that's me. So that's a form of spirituality, and it's a Māori thought is right behind that as well. Ko au te whenua, ko te whenua ko au. I am the land, and the land is me. And so to me, there is no restriction. You can be functional alcoholism and tea and all those cute things, and you are at one with the whenua. This is the whenua that speaks to you, that is in your heart. And whenua is not only the word for land, but also for placenta, because it's what sustains us. So you've carried whenua literally, and you might return the whenua, the placenta, to the land. So to me, it's a way for all of us to say, yeah, this is our whenua. And the ways that we came together, our marriage has been interesting. It started in 1840 officially, but it was complicated, and sort of go, yeah, and this is us. But if you know for sure that you feel connected to this land and every part of it, then this is definitely a way that you can engage and invite people to, spiritually as well, in a way that's not religious. It's not bound by rules, but I do know that Te Reo Māori and Tikanga Māori can help guide us, because it's seated in this whenua.
Mm. And how will you celebrate Matariki in your whānau?
By working, which is not what you're supposed to do. There's a lot, like it's already started. We've got Matariki events at all of the kids' schools. They're at 3 different schools. And part of it is actually, yes, I'll be working on the Matariki broadcast, but also, actually things like this. My husband's already been doing Matariki kōrero. We've preloaded some of classes that we run on Matariki, but also just we'll probably experience at least 3 or 4 hautapu, ceremonies as well. There's other things as well, like one of our ceremonies, maybe not so well known, is ahitaitai. And so that's like literally dumping feelings and stuff into a fire. And like that's clever.
That sounds a bit of me.
That sounds good.
And so, all of that, which is such a great time of year to do that too. And the other thing about Matariki, Scotty and I have made a commitment to make this a reminder to have health checks. So we're doing that just because it's a good reminder. It's easier at the beginning than the beginning or the end of the year, which is, calendar year, which is always too hectic. So this is part of our engagement with Matariki being about well-being as well.
Mm. Oh, that's a good idea actually. Like health checks and all of those things that you need to tick off in a fresh way. Yeah, I love that. And congratulations on your Blake Leadership Award, where you've been recognised for your 30-year career in the media industry and giving mentoring and leadership to Māori presenters, broadcasters and journalists as they navigate the industry too. And what did that award mean for you?
Oh, I was very surprised, humbled, to become part of a kind of legacy like that. I said at the time, honouring the Blake whānau and their connection to the moana, to the ocean, but also, I guess, welcoming us into their kind of legacy is very special. And I thought, I literally stopping my toes from curling right now because I don't really like it being that much about me per se. But I do really appreciate the kaupapa. I thought it was really cool because I don't, you could easily say, well, what's your job of leadership? I don't have a title. But what I did say is that the word rangatira is one way we talk about leaders, and it literally means ranga, to weave, and tira, a group. So weaving a group of people together. So I can live with that. I don't call myself a rangatira, but I am driven by that concept of weaving, groups of people together. And ideally that's what I think the Blake leadership kaupapa is definitely about. And it was also just a really beautiful night. And I had some of my favorite people there. And they're good at making me just sit in those moments. And my husband did a beautiful karakia, which I was very moved by and proud of. And it's good because it means I don't have to talk so much.
But I think it's important sometimes to acknowledge what you have achieved, to stand and look behind you and think, I've done a lot, like I've worked hard and I've achieved a lot, which you have. So, you should be really proud of yourself. That's a very well-deserved award.
I will if you will.
Stacey, if there's people who listen to this and they feel inspired to bring more te reo into their lives or bring, more of a cultural aspect into their lives, more of that spiritual aspect, can you recommend a good place to start? I mean, you have released some excellent books as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the great thing is there's so much more out there, but Matariki would be a great start. As I say, just however it's turning up in your life as an opportunity, and that might be through your kids' school, but also, anything that you can listen to, anything that you can engage with. The Matariki broadcast will be on from 6 a.m. on the Matariki holiday day. It'll be around everywhere, just finding out a little bit more about Matariki. That's a really good time. And then if life happens and you get a bit busy, I mean, there are lots of podcasts and books. My husband's put out a couple of audiobooks as well. But basically any input you put in or effort you put in, I can promise money back guarantee that you'll get maybe double back. So yeah, it is actually everywhere. Scotty's books are Māori Made Easy and Māori at Home, all of those, but it's not actually just about ours. There's heaps that you can engage with. Māori Minute, there's Hemi Kelly's stuff is amazing. Also Disney Reo Māori, and you're sitting there with the kids and engaging in Reo Māori, and you already know what's going to happen in Lion King, and it's still tragic. So, but it's somehow even more beautiful in Māori. They've got Encanto Reo Māori coming out. My daughter's got a little part in that, which is so cute.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and she's actually in one of my favourite scenes. They said, "Hey, Mama, it's that scene that you keep on laughing at really loudly." And I was like, yeah, I think it's so funny. So there's toy time, all of these things, engaging with your kids, I think is such a good way to do it because they are better at remembering things than us. And so if you use their young, very flexible and still very good working brains to remind you, then that's a good way to do it. And bring it into your whānau. You might be doing waiata, you might feel comfortable about doing karakia kai, which is basically to say thank you for the food that you're about to eat and giving recognition for that, or karakia kai, like say at night, as I said, that karakia before, just whatever works for you. Maybe you like to, you can just put songs on in the car that are waiata reo Māori, and that just sort of actually still says, sets a kind of culture in our family. This is part of who we are.
Oh, I love that so much. And thank you so much, Stacey, for your time today. We have so appreciated it. And it sounds like you're in for a very busy Matariki. So good luck getting through everything. It sounds like it's going to be a good time. So I am very excited to tune into the broadcast. That'll be cool.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us today. Really appreciate that. And just wanted to honour the work that you're doing. You're working with meaning and purpose and providing so much to people in our collective culture. So, really appreciate that.
Tēnā rawa atu koruatahi. Thank you so much for having me. Mānua tia Matariki, and I wish you a very successful, celebratory and special Matariki.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Untidy. If you enjoyed it, we would love your help to support us. Things you can do that make a huge difference is subscribing to the show so you never miss an episode. You can also leave us a little 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And of course, please share this podcast with your mates. It means that we can continue to build this community and keep putting out Untidy episodes and just doing what we love to do. Don't forget to check out mybigmoments.com. the kids' books that make your tricky job of parenting a whole lot easier. And Untidy listeners get a discount at checkout. Just pop in Untidy for 10% off your order. Thanks, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon.